Namaskar. On behalf of Sanjay Puri, who was supposed to be here to conduct this program this morning, he had to go for another session. So I am here on his behalf, would like to welcome all of you for this session. The chairperson for this session, Justice Vigneshwaran, Chief Minister, North Province, Sri Lanka. Also, Shri M. Kula Segaran, Member of Parliament from Malaysia. I'd like to request Mr. Kula Segaram to start the session and say a few words.
Mr. Justice Vigneshwaran, Chief Minister of Northern Sri Lanka, other delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Inbame Sulga, Elorum Valga. Vanakkam. Just to start off by saying that I'm a Tamil and a Hindu. I'm from Malaysia. I'm a sort of a fourth generation Hindu in my country. Malaysia, as you would have heard, most of you will know, it's a very beautiful country. It has got very good, very great challenges now. We used to form almost exclusively of the of the Hindu stock those days. As everywhere else, we have dwindled. We are now, in 1957, we were something like 12%, and now it is 7.5%. I don't blame anybody in particular, but I blame our women for not producing enough babies, who have now, because of emancipation and other things and all that. But leaving that alone, also the other factor is the double and triple production by the Muslims. Many of my classmates have very grown-up grandchildren. I'm shocked. My children are not even married, and they have grandchildren who are already marriageable age. They get married very early, and that kind of the factors. On a more serious note, in my country, many would have heard also that many years ago, the demolition of temples, the attack on Hinduism has been very prevalent and very strong. After 2008, after the general elections, all that stopped. Not because the government wanted to stop it, but I think it's because the people of the country, in particular the Hindus, overwhelmingly voted for the opposition. I come from one of the largest single Indian Hindu constituency in the country. When I say largest, not in terms of numbers, in terms of percentage of voters. I will tell you the numbers. The numbers is just minute if you say in India. My constituency is one of the bigger ones, which 90,000 voters. In my country, 90,000 is big. But here, I suppose an MLA having 200,000, 300,000 is nothing. And I have about 25% Indian, and the majority are Hindu voters. And there are a lot of temples in my place. Ipoh Barat, Ipoh West. Traditionally, from 1957, the first time when we had 57, 56, we had the elections. Traditionally, it's been MPs have come from the Indian stock. The Srinivasagam brothers, the famous lawyers, and thereafter Patu and others. We have a lot of limitations and control. One of the things that I feel very strong in my country is the overextension and help of the federal government and the state governments to Muslim mosque, in terms of, not only in terms of financial help, but in all respect, the assistance given by the federal government. Why I say that? Because at the end of the day, you need money to run temples. It's not easy. And the government not only gives and maintains the imams, the qadis and all that, they also provide free water and electricity to all mosques in my country. But that is not the case with Hindu temples. Although the demolition of Hindu temples has stopped, sort of in the last 6-7 years, the Hindu community still suffers in many ways. Having said that, but there's also a lot of limitations having what I've said. So the Hindu community also partly to be blamed, because many of us simply build Hindu temples all around and everywhere, and no proper accountability, no proper person running it, no proper money is collected, accounted for, and that kind of things. Those are the drawbacks. The teaching of Hinduism and other kind of things is not very deep and not very rampant in my country. It has basically confined to Tamil schools. We have the southern stock of the Tamil people of this country, Dravidian stock. We have presently about, some say the largest number of Tamil schools outside Tamil Nadu. We have 523 Tamil schools. In almost all the schools, somehow a little bit of religion is taught. And obviously the direct encouragement of Islamic teachings are there. With all these limitations, somehow it is survived, and we have two national holidays, the Deepavali, or Diwali as to the North Indians, and the Thaipusam, the religious festival. Other than that, nothing big. But having said that, the richest man in the country is also a Hindu. Many people don't know him, but I also don't know him. A lot of the Hindus are doing quite well, reasonably, in business and other activities. But we got a lot of limitations because of the government making it very difficult. Before the start of this session, I asked whether I can speak frankly, because whatever I speak here, it's the most seditious in nature in my country. I can easily be hauled up, and because these are things that you cannot say it out, more so in a foreign country. But having said that, why is religion very important to many? It is our right. You do what you think is right. By my country of late, in the last few decades, the conversion rate among the Hindus, not to Hinduism, from Hindus to Islam and Hindus to Christianity, is also on the high increase rate. Why? Because the bulk of the Hindus are either not well-to-do or not well-informed, and conversion is quite rampant. There are many cases, court cases pending now, where Hindu women, children who are minors, less than 18 years old, the father takes away, converts the children, runs away with the children, and little safeguards under the law. Oh yes, you can go to court. In one particular case, we have gone to court, where we got all the orders that is conceivable can be thought of under the law. We have got an order against a husband, a custody order in the civil court. We have at the same time a civil court and the Sharia court in my country. Although we have a federal system where the civil court is the most important and priority court in the country, but yet the Sharia court can give similar orders, like the case that we are doing now. Very interesting. Her name is like in your former Prime Minister's name, Indira Gandhi. She's our client, and she has got 3 children, all minors. Her husband was a bit naughty and decided to convert to Islam. There's no problem. I mean, you can convert, you can do what you want. It doesn't matter. But after conversion, he straight goes to the Islamic court of Sharia, gets an order, custody, and control over the children. And he snatches away the last child, who was then breastfed, about 8 months old. It's already 5 years, and the child is missing, the father is missing. And we know where the child is, where the father is. We have lodged, my client has lodged reports. I'm just giving you one instance because there are similar of this nature many in my country. Many will not take up the matter because it's costly to go to court and very cumbersome. My client is a kindergarten teacher. In fact, she asked me one day, how long will the case take to settle? I told her honestly, if I were you, I will go and study law. When you finish law, by that time only maybe the case may be over. It's already now 5 years in the courts. And sometimes people ask me which stage of the court or which stage of the application is. I myself don't know, although I'm one of the lawyers. There's so many applications, interlocutory application, appeal application, that kind of thing. But in this case, in the civil court, we got the necessary order of custody. The husband got custody order in the Sharia court, but when he got a custody order in the Sharia court, her wife was not present, because under Malaysian law, Sharia courts only applies to those who profess the Muslim religion, not to any other religion. But the civil court applies to both, but not to Muslims in terms of custody and that kind of thing. Yet, the husband came and fought the case, and the matter went on. We got the order, we went to Court of Appeal, all that is over. Then finally, we got the warrant of arrest against the husband to retrieve the child. We served it on the husband. Then we also served on the Inspector General of Police. And the Inspector General of Police had the audacity to say this. He says, in this kind of custody matters, it's best that the child is kept in a halfway home, and the police should not be dragged into it. When he has got direct orders by the civil court ordering him to retrieve the child, it's already now about 6 months, he has not done it. Then we went for him, we got an order against him personally, asking him to retrieve the child. We got it in the High Court, has now gone to the Court of Appeal, and the decision is supposed to come day before yesterday, last day, and the court has not given us a decision. And I believe it will just drag on for some months and years. Now, why I say this particular case is because these are great challenges in my country. The non-Muslim community, which used to form something like 45% in 1957, has dwindled now to something like, the Prime Minister in the budget said there are only about 26% non-Muslims in the country, or 30%, about 30%. So the dwindling non-Muslim population is a concern, but these are unavoidable factors because of the all around the world. The Muslim population has been aggressively increasing multifold. So in my country, this is another factor, and I'm always reminded by what my father told me when I was a young boy. We are from the rural area. He was taking me to a temple. He said, why are there so many Hindu temples in this country? I was a young boy. It struck me. He said, you see, on Fridays, you don't even have people coming to pray. And I can see it now. I think it will come a time when many of our temples, you don't even have devotees going there. Not because of loss of faith of the Hindu religion, but because of the dwindling population and migration of Hindus and well-to-do people from the rural areas to the urban areas. And these are the temples will be left out, like in some parts of other parts of the world. And these are factors that you cannot escape. These are things that you have to go through. What can we do? A bigger challenge will be the community taking part, its role into strengthening the role of religion and those factors, which is not easy because it is not really directly beneficial monetary wise. So many may not do that, and people like us, it's not easy. And a lot of well-to-do, academically qualified children, some of them are Hindus who don't get into the universities. Not because, I was thinking this morning, if you get a first class at your degree level, in other countries you'll get automatic place to do masters. In my country, it's not so much of that. It all depends whether you are a native, or they call it native, or you are a non-native. If you are a native, you are given absolute preference. Not first class, even if you get third class, is given preference. If you are a Hindu, it is very, very, very difficult to get into higher institutions. Many of us, I have here senior lawyer Mr. Kanasalingam, many of us went out to study out of the country in England and elsewhere those days, to study law and all that, to come back to practice with our own parents' money and all kind of things. The world knows about it. They're so busy doing everything else except getting involved with Hindu affairs. It's not so profitable, I think so. On my part, as a parliamentarian, I feel very strong about the minorities in my country. I have, over the time, the reason why I got involved in politics is because of this, because I felt the minorities are being taken for a ride. And I had a very difficult life myself. My parents were ordinary laborers, never saw the importance of education and whatnot, but my mother saw it and encouraged, back, borrow, gave money for me to go and study law and come back. And we're doing well as lawyers, no problem about it, but the call to serve the country, call to serve your community is very strong among many, and it was with me. That is why I ran for office. And I'm now the fourth term member of parliament. In the last few years, the number of Hindu MPs have increased in parliament. Not so much of because people want to vote the Hindus in, but because of sometimes you belong to a certain party and they put you as candidates and you get elected in that sense. We're doing reasonably okay, but in parliament it's not so easy to raise Hindu matters per se, because we only form about 7.5% of the population now. And there's not a single parliamentary or state constituency, MLA, which has a Hindu Indian majority. As I said earlier, my constituency is one of the largest, where 1 out of 4 voters are sort of Hindu voters. And I've been pushing for the last few years for in hindsight, and I feel that the minorities need not only be need protection in the country, but also the worrisome is ethnic cleansing and that kind of things. Why I say this is because some of us from my country will know in 1969 there was a racial riot. Nearly about 300,000 Hindus migrated back to India. And there was no safeguards by India, no safeguard by any other countries in the world to ensure that these people are taken care. In their own country, they're deprived of the citizenship and all that. We have presently, every Malaysian have got an identity card. Before that, you must have a birth certificate. All that are prerequisites before you get your passports and all that. There are apparently more than 100 or 1,000 Indians who don't have any documentation. They are stateless, so they are lost out in all respect. When I asked a question about 6-7 years ago, the government confirmed there were 66,000 stateless people, and many have now got some documentation one way or the other. Finally, I'm compelled to say this. I've been pushing, as I said, for the government to ratify the International Criminal Court statute, International Criminal Court of the Rome Statute, because I feel that the International Criminal Court, which deals quite exclusively on genocide, ethnic cleansing, war issues and all that, is sort of a safeguard, a big brother looking over a nation. I was able successfully to get the Malaysian cabinet to approve it after so much of international meetings and all that in 2011. But then we have other people who are much more trying to put a spanner into the whole system. We have the Attorney General of my country who has in divergent thinking with me and others, and therefore the government has not ratified the Rome Statute, the International Criminal Court. If some of you may know about the International Criminal Court, it plays a very strong part in countries like in Africa where ethnic cleanses have taken place. Therefore, this is important, and I'm still pushing for it. In fact, next month there's a meeting overseas where my parliament is sending me to discuss on these matters. Discussion after discussion, but nothing much is happening. But this kind of safeguards are important. Finally, Mother India has to play its part. It's not easy. You failed us in 1969. If you had just threatened like what the Chinese what Chinese government threatened the Indonesian government, if you don't take care of my people in your country, I will send my troops to your country to do this. These are things that is important. They're kind of indirect fears or indirect discipline is required, but this is missing, whatever said in this part of the world. With that, this is a little thing. I can take some questions. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to request Justice C.V. Vigneshwaran Chief Minister, Northern Province, Sri Lanka, to address us. Thank you. Questions can be asked later after he finishes.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Honorable Parliamentarian, distinguished delegates to the first World Hindu Congress. This is a surprise meeting to me because 15 minutes before 9:30, I was told that there is a meeting that I had to speak and this is what you have to do. Though it was mentioned that we may have to be answering questions on adverse and complex political situations. I was not quite aware of this. But anyway, the matter to be discussed among us today in getting together is united efforts in adverse and complex political situations, especially with regard to Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Now, I suppose united efforts on the part of the Hindus probably is what is meant in adverse and complex political situations. Now, there is no doubt complex political situation, adverse political situation, which is the order of the day as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. Then how do we look into this question? Within these 15 minutes, I was just going through in my mind what should be the answer to this question. And I thought that when you say united efforts, unitedly we have got to bring this to the notice of the larger area of human beings so that it will have an effect on the political situation in the country where you are. Now, what I mean by that is, generally, the political situation in a country is going to be adverse or complex, mainly because of authoritarianism getting in. When there is an authoritarian government, generally democracy fades away, and there is bound to be problems as far as some section of the country is concerned, some section of the people are concerned. Now, those people would be generally powerless because of the immense amount of power that the government holds. And therefore, the question really is, how do we make them able to make the establishment realize their folly and do something about it, about their adverse circumstances. So now, one would say one of the ways by which this could be done, or at least the main manner in which this could be done or could be made use of our united efforts would be to bring it to the notice of the larger context of the world. So, bringing it to the macro universal, to the notice of the macro universal human being, humanity would be the first step. The second, or it might be the other way around, but let me go by one. The second one would be macro national unit. Third one, the unit itself. What I mean by that is, now let us say as far as the Sri Lankans are concerned, suppose it is the Hindus in Sri Lanka, first of all, they must unite and make themselves into a united group. Second one would be to look around for those who are very close to them, either by virtue of religion or language or any other means or so many other, in so many other perspectives, that they are able to come together, mainly a national group or a religious group. So that would be the second step where those belonging to that group can come together. That's the second one. The third one will be as a humanity, as a group of human beings who are concerned about human rights, it is necessary to bring it to the notice of the larger group. So now this is precisely what we, having come into power in the northern province in Sri Lanka, have been trying to do. You know, it is very important to realize that when the war was over in 2009, it was told, we are going to bring democracy into the northern province and the eastern province. And here we have an MP from the eastern province here. So we are going to bring democracy into the life of the northern and eastern provinces. We are going to have the elections very soon and so on. 2009 they did not have, 10 they did not have, 11 they did not have, 12 they did not have, even 13, the early part, they did not have until Mr. Menon, your Foreign Secretary, Shiv Shankar Menon, National Security Advisor came over, he would be knowing all the details, and said, well, you must have the elections to the northern province. I think somebody asked, what if we don't? And I think he said there would be consequences, and that was good enough. Because the consequences came out of the fact that our elections in the northern province was going to be the outcome of an Indo-Sri Lanka agreement written in 1987. So it was that agreement that foresaw the elections to take place in the northern province, and that is the very thing that had not been done. So the very fact that there was this understanding on the part of India with regard to its obligations under the 1987 Accord made it possible for the Indian government to tell a few things to the Sri Lankan government, and therefore we had the elections in 2013, where the people who had been dumb and mute all those years were able to show their feelings by returning 30 out of 38 of the elected members, quite against the governmental and the government's party members lost the election. So we were able to show the world that we were united in our spirit, in our mind, with regard to our thoughts, but because of majoritarianism, because of military onslaught on our on the northern province, that we had to undergo all those difficulties, and we could not say what we wanted to say. So now why I am talking about that is in order to show you that unity at a certain level or understanding at a certain level is very important if you want to make those in authority to start thinking whether they are doing the right thing. So the very fact that there was a possibility that India was going to make sure of democracy coming over to the northern province itself made the Sri Lankan government wanting to bring the elections. So now in the same way, what we are trying to do is to bring it to the notice of the entire world what is taking place, and that's how the Geneva, the investigation with regard to war crimes is now taking place. And that is one way by which we have brought it to the notice of the entire world, because the adverse and complex situation that is faced by the Tamil community in the northern province and north and eastern province of Sri Lanka could not be brought to the notice of the world until and unless things like this happen, where we were able to go and give all these information with regard to what was taking place, and when they came to know about it, when they saw all the CDs and various things that were being shown, then they started realizing, my God, there seems to be something very drastic, very nasty, very brutal that seems to have gone through and happening in the northern province or in the northeastern province. And therefore, now we have the international body having an international inquiry with regard to the war crimes. So now that is at a macro universal level, I would say that we have to take united efforts in order to bring about benefits for us when we are in an adverse and complex political situation. The second round would be at a national level. By virtue of a national level, I'm not really making it simply to a particular state, not at that level. A level or as a group level. We might say it was not national, as a group level. Now that's what we are at the moment doing. The Hindus all over the world have come together, and I'm in a position, by virtue of the office that I hold, to tell you all, this is what is happening. My friend there will be able to say things that are happening in the eastern province. Now this is a way by which those of us who belong to a particular religion, who have a particular background, cultural unity as far as we are concerned, that we are able to come together, take certain steps which will have to be taken recognition by those in power in that particular country. Now that's an important thing, the manner in which we come together, we show our unity, and this unity and this united efforts on our part will be able to bring about certain change of circumstances as far as the government or those in governance, those in power would be able to take note of. Then, of course, we come to the third one, the unit itself. We have a lot of difficulties in trying to get our people together. You see, it's a very interesting thing. Since the war, I find that there are three groups of people after the war, among the Tamil people, or among majority of whom are Hindus, those who feel there is no way out except to fight for a separate state. Because that was the dream of those who took up to arms, and they went off without being able to get what they wanted. So there are those who feel, well, that is the best thing, and that is what we should fight for. Well, that's their perception, that's their view. There's a second set of people who feel all this is nonsense. We just join up with the government, get what they give you, and be done with it. All this talk about your rights and all that is all nonsense. It's the economic benefits that is important. If you can get economic benefits, why are you talking in terms of all the other things? Just let them do all what they want, but let them give us the economic benefits. That's a second group of people who have that sort of feeling, that sort of perception. The third group, to which I also belong, we came into power asking the people for support on the basis that any solution to the problem must be within a united country. But we must be recognized as a unit of individuality, that is to have self-determination as far as we are concerned, and we must be given the maximum devolution. These are three things that was mentioned in our manifesto. So we have mentioned that, and we are not prepared to do the second one of just going to the government and saying, okay, give what you want, we will take it and we are quite satisfied. That we are not prepared to. We are very conscious of our background. We are very conscious of our heritage. We are very conscious of the fact that we have lived for over 2,000 years in the northern and eastern provinces in Sri Lanka. We are very conscious of the fact, even however difficult, however the historical facts may be so difficult to come to a decision. We belong to a community which existed from pre-Buddhistic times. So the whole, the Sinhala community and Sinhala Buddhists are those who came in subsequently. So as far as the northern and eastern provinces, we are conscious of the fact that there is cultural affinity that has been found in inscriptions and with regard to excavations done, which show long before 300 BC, that which has been found at, I think, Ariyanallur in South India, as well as somewhere close to Putlam in Sri Lanka. Very similar urns had been found. So the same culture, same background, same religious heritage has been inherited by our people. And that is what I'm trying to tell you, that we are conscious of our background and therefore would have to come together. But unfortunately, as I was telling you, these three types of the people who have three different perceptions are finding it very difficult to come together under one umbrella. And that is, unfortunately, is a weakness on our part. If only we could come to, at least for a short time or on a basis of agreement, come together, then our united efforts in this regard from the third unit would be much more stronger than earlier. So these are three ways by which I'm trying to point out to you the united efforts on our part in adverse and complex political situations can be attended to. One, at a macro universal level. Secondly, at a macro group level. Thirdly, at the group level. So as far as the Sri Lankan Tamils are concerned, the group level unity is very essential, and we are calling upon all the diverse groups to come together. In fact, we have already done so, because ours is TNA is a Tamil National Alliance, so there are a number of 5 parties have come together. But still there are people who do not conform to these things, so we are trying to bring them together. Though that is one aspect of it. There is another, a further extension of that. We are, apart from bringing the northern and eastern province Tamils together, we would like to bring the Tamils from the upcountry area, who are also Tamils, but they came subsequently, but they are also speaking the same language, have the same religion, have the same cultural background. We have to bring them together. And also, there is considerable discussions going on for some sort of a agreement at a political level with regard to the Muslims, because they are also Tamil speaking as far as the eastern province and the northern provinces are concerned. So we are very conscious of the unity that is essential from the point of view of the group level. We are trying to forge, thanks to every one of you all being here, we are trying to forge an understanding and unity as far as the larger group is concerned of Hindus, because the Hindus form about the 80 to 85% of the Tamil-speaking people in northern and eastern provinces. So we would like to be having a united understanding with regard to how we should be able to go forward, and in that it's the group level, and of course the thirdly is at a macro level. We are trying to take our problems to the larger world and make the world powers, world people, those who are interested in human rights, to take up our position. And that's why the Geneva investigations are going on. So I think I have exceeded the 5 minutes that has been given to me. We will now go on to the next thing. I think he will give us the necessary information. Thank you.
On your views on united efforts in adverse and complex political situations. The House is now open for questions, and we will start. We don't have much time, but we'll be quick on the questions.
Namaskar. I'm Ramesh Mehta from Mumbai, from Bharat. I have a question for Malaysia. As far as I've learned, I've studied the history of Malaysia as well. That last Hindu king of Malaysia was Parmeshwaran. Please, if I'm wrong, kindly guide me. Right. Right. He became Iskandar. Am I right? Iskandar Shah. And this is what I learned. Now, what further I have learned of Malaysian education system, there are Malaysian Hindus as well, and they want the history to be taught, the original history of Malaysia, ancient history of Malaysia. What is the, if you can elaborate on that, I'll feel highly, I add to my knowledge. And one more question, sir, for you, for Sri Lanka. How many Hindus are in Sri Lanka? As you said, Tamil speaking, maybe non-Hindus also. But then those non-Hindu Tamils, are they faithful to Tamil speaking Hindus, or say to the majority? Or they, what we face here, you face the same thing there. That's a very important thing. And one more thing finally, what is the situation? Why not Tamil people are in the army and military and all these things? Or they are not allowed to do that? I would like to understand. Thank you.
You carry on. You finish yours.
Thank you, sir.
Can I take the question?
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Very interesting question. Sorry?
What do you mean?
No, no, age is catching up. I forget all these questions, so I rather answer. Very interesting question. The same problem we're having in my country. In fact, many of us who went to school, I must tell you the background. Yes, we studied about Parameswara, the prince, and then subsequently conversion. Nowadays, you ask the children, they wouldn't even know who Parameswara is. History has been rewritten. Yeah, a lot of removal. They're experts in removal and rewriting. In fact, to the extent now, in most schools, Islamic history has been taught. During our time, hardly any Islamic history. Not that it was not important. There was some relevance of it, like Islamic civilization and all that. But now from A to Z, it has been given preference. We have been scolding them in parliament and elsewhere, but they're not budging because they want to, indoctrinate this kind of thing. That's why now the vernacular schools, what we call the Tamil schools and Chinese schools, are taking more importance because the parents feel that rather have their children been sent to Tamil school or to Chinese schools will at least safeguard your historical background and your religious background. People like me, my first son went to national school. At that time it was different. Now I made sure that my daughter go to Tamil school. And she's complaining because we're staying in the area. She says, Papa, everybody in this area goes to international school. Why you only send me to Tamil school? Huh? Sometimes I got this kind of young girl, that's practical thing. But she goes to the club, she's so embarrassed because all of them go to English school and get all the kind of things, a bit different. But these are the realities. Our history books have been rewritten. They're trying to slowly erase all these our connections with it. In fact, if you find younger Muslim Malays, they wouldn't admit that their ancestors were Hindus. What is that? Nothing to do with me. I'm all the way. They think they were Muslims only the last, like from 1500s. Before that, they were Hindus. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry? Do they think they are Arabs?
They are now more Arabs than Arabs. You
Right.
know what I mean.
Now you said about Islamic civilization. I mean, sorry to interrupt. There is no civilization among Muslims.
That's your view.
No, Mr. Ramesh, I can always create one. If I'm the Minister of Education, I can say you have to listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. With regard to the history being rewritten, it is happening in Sri Lanka also. Because as I was telling you, our knowledge of history shows, and thanks to various excavations, that the similar civilization that obtained in south of India and in the north of Sri Lanka, I mean, had been there in the north of Sri Lanka, and it is quite possible to point out that it is pre-Buddhistic. So therefore, that civilization had been there even before Buddha. And as you know, the Sinhala language is a combination of the existing languages in Sri Lanka before the coming of Buddhism. And Buddhism brought Pali, and it is Pali plus the local languages which equals Sinhala. And local languages at that time, nothing other than Tamil. But we don't like to say that because they say it is Elu and they give various other names with regard to it. But Elu language is accepted by historians as the original Tamil, because there is a distinction between Tamil itself as Kodun Tamil and Sen Tamil. The earlier Tamil is supposed to be a little more difficult Tamil, than that was what was prevailing at that time. Anyway, that was that is in continuation of what my friend was talking about. Your question is with regard to how do those, what is the amount of Tamils, Hindus in Sri Lanka, and how do the non-Hindu Tamil-speaking people pull along with you? Isn't that your question? Yes. I think all total, we have about 12 to 13%. The numbers, I'm sorry, I did not come ready with it. But that is Hindus, including, because the Buddhists are about 74, then there is the Christian Tamils, Christian Sinhalese and Christian Tamils. Then there is the Muslim. the Sinhala-speaking Muslims and the Tamil-speaking Muslims, and the Hindus. So these three categories make up the 1/4 of the community. So in that, about almost half, about 12%, is Tamil-speaking and Hindus. That is including the upcountry Tamils, But upcountry Tamils are Tamils who came in during British times, and then yes, they were brought in to work in the plantation areas. So, as far as the Tamil-speaking Muslims are concerned, there is quite a lot of understanding because of the commonness of the language. But as my friend here will tell you, at the moment we are at a disadvantage. I don't want to say anything further except to say that it was possible for the Tamil-speaking people to have taken control of the eastern province, but lo and behold, the main Muslim party thought it fit to join up with the government. So now we have a Muslim chief minister, a Sinhalese leader of the house or a chairman of the Eastern Provincial Council, and a leader of the opposition who is a Tamil Hindu. So, well, they are a little selfish, but then they will come around, and we hope to get them around to help us on the basis of our language, because of the language. The religious part of it, we do have difficulties, but it has not been as severe as some other parts where there had been a more greater understanding. You will see our music director, what Rahman is he? A.R. Rahman. You see, he is almost, and even your former president, Abdul Kalam, they as Muslims are not the type of Muslims that you would think a Muslim should be. So we have quite a large number of such Muslims also among us. So I don't want to say anything derogatory of our Muslims brothers, but I would only say that political opportunism has been very patent during the past. And the very same Muslims now come and they tell me, so we want your leadership, sir. Our leaders have let us down, and so on and so forth. But I'm not taking that at all, because I say, no, you come in, you unite yourself under your heads, your people, and then we can come to some political understanding. There is no question of my giving any leadership to the Muslims, I have told them. Anyway, that is a part. The third question, I have forgotten what you said. As he said, I'm also getting old. What is the third part of the last question you asked?
He has also forgotten.
Is there another further question to be answered?
No, what I asked you, you almost replied.
Okay, then it's okay. Thank you.
Right. My name is Kuhanendran. I'm the director of the Global Tamil Forum from London. Just to put you in the context of the Tamil problem, or the Hindu problem, let's make it a Hindu problem. I was brought up in the south, Mathura, Veligam. There are 4 Tamil groups. There are the plantation Tamils, who now I think would be the majority of the Tamils. Then there is the northern province Tamils, there is the eastern province Tamils, and there is the Tamil-speaking Muslims among the Tamils. Most of the plantation Tamils, almost all, are Hindus. And in the north, 90% would be Hindus. In the east, the Tamils, most of them are Hindus. These 3 people are affected in 3 different ways. In the plantations, in the olden times, my father, with Justice Krishnadasan, used to run the Mathura Madam. And droves, about hundreds of thousands of plantation Tamils go to Kaliramam every year. That is the only time they get time off work. That's the only time their relaxation, and they go in droves. And after the 58 riots, that didn't take place. And Ramakrishna Mission was built by my dad. And nowadays my uncle ran the Ramakrishna Mission for a long time. And those things don't function. Now if you go to the Ramakrishna mission, it's monkeys are occupying it because it's a sacred area, no one can go. I took my children to show what my dad did those days, and the only thing you find in the Ramakrishna mission is monkeys. No inhabitants, a museum, the front end. In the Tamil, in the northern areas, there are lots of damages, as Justice Vigdeshwar pointed out yesterday. Lot of damage to temples, and I have lands in Madhagal area, and those lands.
Sorry to disturb you. What's your question for the?
I'll be coming to that.
Because we are running short of time.
Yes. So those there, government is taking over the land to build Buddhist temples in Madhagal, that area where Yasodhara landed. The eastern province, it is a conspiracy between the Muslims and the government to keep the Tamil villages, people out, and the temples to what they call wither away. There's a lot of pressure in the eastern province, in particular the Kalmana, that area. So all these people are suffering in different kinds of ways. I'll come quickly. We have been campaigning around the world to get a solution. In Geneva, we have been working hard. Our problem has been the government of India. Government of India, we have been unable to get. Americans are leading the struggle on human rights, getting the resolutions out, getting those guys accountable. But I have been doing my best to get the government of India. We haven't got it. Now I was in Washington last Monday with the State Department of what is to be done after the report coming from the Human Rights Commission. And they are asking me, what is the government of India's position? Same thing, British Foreign Office, asking what is the government of India's position? But then they play fast and loose. This is one of the problems, as Justice Vigdeshwaran says, there is an international dimension. How is this macro thing square up? How does India come and plug the gap? There are lots of people who are supporting, but our biggest problem has been last few years is the government of India.
Am I to answer that? Well, I'm not holding a brief for Indian government. They can very well afford to do that. But I could say this one thing. Every country has to look after its self-interest. And it is not correct on our part to believe that every country, because of the seriousness of the problems that we undergo, should openly become what shall we say, helpers or openly take up the cause in that fashion as you would want it to be. But there is a great help that is being given by India now as far as the northern and eastern provinces are concerned. For example, when the president came in there, the new prime minister, he had no difficulties in saying, you must make the 13th Amendment work, because it's an agreement between India and Sri Lanka, and I find that you are not putting that into effect, and you must get that work. Of course, as far as we are concerned, that is not enough. In fact, anything under the under a unitary constitution is going to give us a lot of difficulties, because it is what the majority community decides to give us, or the government decides to give us, which will be available to us. So therefore, there is definitely difficulties with regard to what should be given to us and all the rest of it. But as far as India is concerned, it has its double-pronged policy in these matters. Maybe that at an international level they have their, but they have in 2 years, I think 2011 and 12, they did support us in those. So one has to take these things in the light of the prevailing political and international dimensions in which each country works. But I have no difficulties in coming to the conclusion that India is trying its best to see that the problems as far as the Tamils or the Hindus of Sri Lanka are concerned is solved soon. Because I would put it this way, the Sri Lankan government has been giving an impression to the world community that there is only a terrorist problem in Sri Lanka. But in actual fact, the so-called terrorist problem came in because there was a problem in Sri Lanka with regard to the Tamils. That has been going on for 30 years, and no solution was found. Our leaders, very much respected leaders, at a certain time said, my God, we have tried everything and it doesn't seem to be helping. Then the youngsters took over on the basis, maybe you have to take up to arms. Well, that taking up to arms may not have come to an end if not for the fact the Sri Lankan government gave definite assurances to the world community that this is a terrorist problem, bring down the terrorists, we will be there to look after the interests of the Tamil people. That is what the present president told the Secretary General of United Nations in 2009, as soon as the war was over, that I'm going to give 13 plus plus, that's what he said, something to that effect. So, which was not done. Then he said that to Dr. Manmohan Singh, your Prime Minister, when he came around, that was not done. And on the contrary, because of the pressure brought in by India, the elections were held, but now they are not allowing the Northern Provincial Council to work. In every manner, we are being stifled, obstructed, and not allowed to work. So, this aspect of it was not known to the world until now. That they thought they had helped in the annihilation of a so-called terrorist group, whereas now they know that there had been also various reasons which prompted the youngsters to take up to arms, and those problems still remain. And therefore, I think India is much more wiser today with regard to the problems of the Tamils in the northern and eastern provinces rather than ever before. So I do not have a pessimistic attitude towards India as you have, sir.
So my name is
One more question because we
my name is Surya Narayan. I was very happy when Kulashekaran started his presentation by saying that he's the fourth generation Hindu. Now in Malaysia, many of them deny their earlier identity. Dr. Mahathir, in his autobiography, Doctor in the House, mentions that his father was a Muslim from Kerala, what we call them as Kakas. But then he considers himself more Malay rather than an Indian. And the Malays, according to anthropologists like Clifford Geertz, are the most mixed in the whole world. Blood of any Arab blood, Indian blood, and others can be seen in them. That Malays today consider themselves a pure group, which is, to say the least, is nonsense. I was extremely happy with Ganeshan also spoke about the other Tamils, the hill country Tamils in Sri Lanka, and also about the Tamil-speaking Muslims. Here I have one point which many in this audience may not know, perhaps Ganeshan. Religion is a compulsory subject in the schools in Sri Lanka. Every child is expected to know about Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. But the textbook for Hinduism is known as Shaiva Nari. The textbook committee was headed by Professor Ramakrishnan, who was heading the Department of Philosophy in Jaffna University. And I had done some research work on these textbooks. These textbooks reflect only the religious practices of the upper caste Sri Lankan Tamils. And it does not reflect at all the religious practices of the hill country Tamil. The fascinating, vibrant, dynamic religious practices of the hill country Tamils are completely ignored. And I've been pleading, I wrote an article in the Hindu and later on the Frontline. I've taken it up with the Sri Lankan authorities. Vigneswaran, you must take your initiative, rewrite these textbooks so it reflects the religious practices, all sections of Hindus in Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Just a little earlier to just, yeah, ask.
My name is Ramesh. I'm from United Arab Emirates. Actually, you are telling trustful people, which is Tamil, Muslims. But the percentage of population, if you will calculate, 70% of Buddhists, more trustful than anywhere compared to Muslims. Every discussion you are telling about Tamil. More than Tamil Muslims can be trust Buddhists. There are 70% Buddhists, 13% Tamil, and 10% Muslims, and 7% Christians. This is the approximate figure of Sri Lanka. And before 10 years before, 7% was the Muslim population. They increased 3%, and Hindu population 2% decreased in Tamil area. So how it will be? You can trust more Muslims than the Buddhists.
Now, the first question was with regard to, sorry, as you said, age is catching up. What did you? Yes, with regard to the textbook on Hinduism, you see, I was mentioning this yesterday also. There is this, we have the Vedantic and the Saivite attitudes with regard to perceptions in the Hindu religion. Those of the northern province, not even the eastern province, the northern province, very many of them, they are Saivites. And in fact, when Ramakrishna Mission wanted to open up a branch in the north about 40, 50 years ago, they were not in favor of it. Because they said, you are going to bring Vedantic thought here. We are Saivites. So it is, I do not know to what extent it is correct to say that it is the higher strata of society in the north. They are Saivites and therefore they are trying to bring it in. It's not that. It is simply because that is the nature of the religion that they have been practicing. See, from the time of Tirumular, we have been having the Saivite understanding of religion, and therefore that has taken prevalence. And because of also Arumuga Navalar, there had been revival of the Saivite thoughts. So I do not think we must be too critical of the fact that Saivism is practiced by those people. In fact, I have been having a background where I was close to the Ramakrishna Mission, Chinmaya Mission, Swami Shantananda had been having a tremendous effect on me. And we were very close to the Vedantic thought. But all the same, it's possible for us to easily understand the Saivite thought and agamic backgrounds and all that, and to get to know them and understand. So I don't think there is any problems with regard to religion-wise as between the upcountry Tamils and the northern and eastern province Tamils with regard to what it is. But of course, certainly rituals are taking charge of everything, and too many rituals which have no meaning at all. So therefore, that has to be brought to an end, and I was talking about it yesterday. Not brought to an end, must be made more, must be made to be understood by people. So that problem is. Then with regard to your question, with regard to the population basis, it is true the Muslims are progressing, or their numbers are increasing very much in every society. Even he was talking about it. So that is because you could have more than one wife. They get married young. The ladies are hardly allowed to do work in the sense go for employment. So there are various reasons for that. Then on the other hand, as far as the Hindus are concerned, our youngsters as well as families have gone to all parts of the world, including you. You have all, I don't know, you are from Sri Lanka or from India? No, originally? From India only. No, were you in Sri Lanka? No. No, I am in Dubai. Right. No, a lot of our people have gone to all parts of the world. So that has dwindled down our numbers. So that's another problem that we have. So the Hindus are certainly getting lesser and lesser. Muslims are getting more and more. That is a phenomenon which is the truth. One of the things which to offset that, I have been saying that our people who are in South India as refugees should be brought back. But then they have some difficulties. Their lands have been taken by the government and handed over to Sinhalese people. So if they come in, they won't be able to get their lands back. So I've been telling the Indian High Commissioner, you must talk to us as well as the central government and have lands earmarked, state lands earmarked for them, build up houses, give ways of livelihood and other things, find out ways of livelihood and all that, and then try and bring them, not forcibly, but make it easy for them to come back, so that we will have more and more people, and then we could have less and less people being colonized from the south. So somebody had taken it very seriously, and some person from America had sent some article in the internet saying, how dare Vigneswaran ask these people to come back? We are here, and once he asks, these governments might ask us also to get back. So naturally they are feeling very much concerned that they probably made use of the fact that there was discrimination in Sri Lanka, all the difficulties they underwent. That was the reason why asylum was given to them in various parts of the world. Now, if you say that they should come back, then probably it might be argued that everything is safe and therefore you should come back, and the governments there might say you must get back. So it does have its other implications. But what I meant was that these people who have left us, more than a lakh of people who are in India, they could very well come around and back to their lands, can do that when it can be discussed between India, Sri Lanka and ourselves. Thank you.
Namachivaya. Onravan Dane, Irandavan Innaran Nandranan. My name is Kanesalingam. I am third generation Jaffna Tamil Hindu from Malaysia. I just heard the comments by Justice Vigneswaran that the boys fought for a separate state and they did not succeed. I would like to say that the grown-up men fought from 1955 till now for 59 years for devolution of powers, and they have failed miserably, and they have no prospect of succeeding at all. And I think Justice Vigneswaran has spoken about united efforts in adverse and complex political situations by skimming on the subject. The real problem is there should be an international independent investigation into human rights abuses in Sri Lanka. I would like to read from the UN report by the UN Secretary General's expert panel. In paragraph 100, they say, from as early as 6 February 2009, the Sri Lankan army continuously shelled within the area that became the second no-fire zone from all directions, including land, air, and sea. It is estimated that there were between 300,000 and 330,000 civilians in that small area. The Sri Lankan army assault employed aerial bombardment, long-range artillery, howitzers, and multiple-barrel MBRLS, as well as small mortars, RPGs, and small arm fires, and some of it fired from a close range. They also estimate that 40,000 people were killed in this. And all these people are civilians, and 90% of them are Hindus. I would like to read another passage from that report that is in page 56.
We have some difficulties with regard to time, sir.
Yes, last one sentence.
Right.
Yes. It says in paragraph 56 that the Indian government collaborated with the Sri Lankan government in this massacre of civilians. Now the solution for Hindus in Sri Lanka is to ask for an independent international investigation into this genocide. And once they do that, the problem will be resolved. But what is obstructing that independent international investigation is India. The Indian government, they are involved. So there should be a domestic investigation in India for participating. And Indian government that participated was the UPA government. Now we have a different government. So the Sri Lankan Tamil National Alliance should ask for a domestic inquiry in India over what the UPA did.
We have no problems at all in your asking for any amount of international investigation with regard to what has taken place. This is with regard to what has taken place in the past. We are more worried with regard to how we move forward. That's one thing. Secondly, there is already an investigation that is taking place. Even genocide is also part of the matters that will be looked into, or they may be brought out during the course of the investigations. We should not unnecessarily make it more difficult for the world body when you want something very specific to be done. That if there is any need for such an investigation to take place, it could take place in time. But to bring that while there is already an existing investigation, it will only confuse everybody involved. And this is one of the problems which I am having at the moment, because there are one or two people who are bent on bringing a resolution, and which I am not quite happy about, wanting an international investigation into genocide. Genocide is not a matter for us to say, it is for the organization which looks into it, the international organization, to say whether there has been genocide or not. Genocide has many more dimensions rather than mere persons being of a particular community being killed. If suppose there is a war in a particular area, and if that area consists of people of that community, or naturally that war would bring about the death of those people. But I'm not saying that you are not, that the facts are quite in your favor, there is no doubt about that. But how we set about it, we have differences of opinion, because it is not proper for us to make the investigations already taking place in any way. We should not jeopardize it, one. Second question on your part with regard to India is, as I told you, India was made to understand that this is a terrorist problem, and if the terrorism is finished, that everything will be all right. But now India is much more understanding, has more reasons to understand what really took place. So I think in time, Indian attitude towards what is taking place in Sri Lanka would be much more in our favor. Thank you.
I'm afraid that we are running out of time, so I'm sure lots of you have lots of more questions. But I think we can continue with these questions in the short break that we have now for tea. It's going to be a very short break because the next session starts at 11:15. I'd like to thank Justice Vigneshwaran and Shri Sugaran, Member of Parliament from Malaysia, for the wonderful on their views that they presented on united efforts in adverse and complex political situations, and for the questions asked by a very vibrant audience. Thank you very much. We meet here for the next session at 11:15, which is on the strategy for safety and security of Hindus in hostile environment. Thank you very much.